and let us all do we can to build a better future.
On Friday's show, we talked about that that god-awful event that was happening at the University of Chicago where you have all these corporate pundits and even Barack Obama talking about bringing back integrity and getting rid of disinformation in the media and really making sure that there's some rules and regulations into big tech, especially on YouTube. And Brian Stelter was there as well, and he was called out by some college students in regards to the fact that, number one, look, corporate media has screwed up so many times. So we're going to talk about Brian Stelter again on CNN, where, again, he's doing a report on Fox News. And let's face it here, folks, Fox News, just like CNN or MSNBC, they are just as inept at their job. They're corporate media outlets. They have a bias. They have a perspective. They're all owned by corporate donors. Let's face it, we have to get rid of the monopolies that control our media. And our political environment that we have allows these institutions like MSNBC and CNN and CBS to thrive because, let's face it, they built an environment to where the media is owned by the top 1%, and the pundits there don't really do their jobs. They're only there to get access to the politicians and not challenge the status quo. And even when they get things wrong, they're never held accountable. For example, the war in Iraq, Russiagate, Hunter Biden's laptop, and so much more. So let's pull up this video here where Brian Stelter is gets basically thwarted by an individual, Joshua Kalla, who is, again, was Yale. They did a research on Fox News, but they also found out that, look, CNN is just as partisan like Fox News. Now, again, this is from CNN, so I apologize if your brain is going to vomit. Just hang in there. It's going to be worth it. Let's play this first video.
Is it possible to make Fox News viewers change their minds about key issues just by having them change the channel?
Maybe.
That's what a new study suggests. It's titled The Manifold Effects of Partisan Media on Viewers' Beliefs and Attitudes. The researchers paid some Fox News fans to watch CNN for 30 days, and then they asked them some questions. The results are fascinating. So let's bring in David Brockman.
Can we pause it here?
Kalla.
Okay, audience, real quick. Let's have democracy in the chat. I should have done this earlier. Do you still have friends or relatives that still watch CNN or Fox News, any corporate media outlet? And have you ever tried to get them to turn away from it? Type 1 if you have or know anyone that is watching CNN or Fox, and if you've tried to get them away from watching it. Type 2 if that doesn't apply to you. I just want to see where chat's going to go with this one. Anyways, let's play the rest of the video.
Conducted the study in September of 2020, and it's just been published this week. Welcome to you both. Let's not waste any time. David, what did you find?
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. So what we did is we recruited a fairly large group of people who predominantly watched Fox News up until September 2020. And in September 2020, we paid them to watch CNN instead at the time at which they usually watch Fox News. And then afterwards, we asked them a variety of questions about what they knew about the world and their attitudes about current events and people like Donald Trump. That was during the Trump presidency, of course. And I think the real key finding here from our perspective is essentially that we find that partisan media is sort of hiding information from voters. And I think there's kind of an analogy to Putin's Russia, where right now Russians, we know, are not getting all the information about what's actually happening in Ukraine. And in the same way that we found during the Trump presidency, those watching Fox News weren't getting all the information about what was really happening, for example, with COVID and otherwise in the Trump administration, that then they started seeing on CNN. They said, oh, wow, I had no idea. I didn't know all this because Fox News wasn't telling me.
So, Josh, you all call this partisan coverage filtering. And basically, you're proving what we've sensed for a while, which is Fox viewers are in the dark about bad news for the GOP.
Pause it here. Look, let's be very clear here, all right? This is not a defense of Fox News, right? Fox News, like all the other corporate media outlets, keep their audience in the dark. They give out their own perspective, their own talking points. Fox News leans conservative, leans Republican, we all know this. CNN, MSNBC, no different. They're more liberal, Democrat, corporate Democrat to be more precise. How concise and to the point were CNN or MSNBC covering Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016 and in 2020? Remember, they kept on smearing him. Hell, the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. During the convention, did 16 negative stories about Bernie Sanders in one whopping day. let's face it, CNN and MSNBC screw up at their jobs too. They keep their audience in the dark. We've seen this over and over again. They're no different than Fox and how they treat their viewers. Nothing fundamentally changes when you watch any of these corporate media outlets. And unfortunately, this is the standard of media that we have because, again, you could thank Bill Clinton signed the Telecoms Act, where now we have 6 corporations controlling 95% of all the media here in this country. It's pretty sad. And now all these corporate media outlets, they're also in our backyard on social media, where the YouTube algorithm favors them so heavily, supports them so much. But independent media is always punished. It's the world we live in. Play the rest of the video.
That's right. Fox and CNN cover different issues, and Fox News predominantly covers issues that make the GOP look good and make Democrats look bad. And on the flip side, CNN engages in this partisan coverage filtering as well that we find. For example, during this time, the Abraham Accords were signed, and these were the agreements where Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain signed a major peace agreement. And we see that Fox News covered this really major accomplishment about 15 times more than CNN did. So we established both networks are really engaging in this partisan coverage filtering. It's not about one side, it's about the media writ large.
I think you're engaging in some both sidesism there, Josh.
Let's pause it here. You could tell right there that Brian Stelter's like, oh, he brought up CNN and our bias. If we can, FaZe, I apologize, but can you just rewind back just a few minutes before Joshua, just at the point where Joshua was bringing that information up? I would like for him to repeat that so our audience hears it. Right there's a good mark. Let's play it.
For example, during this time, the Abraham Accords were signed, and these were the agreements where Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain signed a major peace agreement. And we see that Fox News covered this really major accomplishment about 15 times more than CNN did. So we established both networks are really engaging in this partisan coverage filtering. It's not about one side, it's about the media writ large.
I think you're engaging in some both sidesism there, Josh.
Not trying to lay out a moral equivalency. It's not about what an objective standard is. It's really about how all networks do engage in this. And in order for viewers to get a realistic picture of the world, we need viewers to see all types of information. And unfortunately, what we find in this study is that the viewers don't want to engage in watching all sides. So as David mentioned, we see that viewers, we pay them for 4 weeks to watch CNN, but then after those payments stop, they go back to watching Fox News. So even though we try to incentivize viewers to watch both Fox and CNN, they don't want to engage in that hard work. Mm-hmm. They want to really just watch the side that makes them feel good. And this is why the media has such an important responsibility to cover both sides, to hold both parties accountable. And
this study has already gotten a lot of attention. David, President Obama mentioned it on stage at the Atlantic's and the University of Chicago's disinformation conference that I was at in Chicago this week. Here's part of what Obama said about your study.
Let's go ahead and pause it here for a second before you talk about Barack Obama and his perspective and his point of view. We're all guilty of this. We're all guilty of wanting to watch something we agree with that fits our point of view, our narrative. We're all guilty of it here and there. But here's the thing. This is why I love this audience. We have a diverse audience, be they Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Socialist, Green, because I think all of us have been burnt out by electoral politics and the disasters that was the 2016, 2018, 2020 election cycles, and 2022 will not be any different. I think we're all burnt out by electoral politics. We're all burnt out by being lied to, these jagoff politicians. We're all burnt out by the fact that, again, here we are in the richest country in the world, and it can't provide health care or even benefits for its citizens. And the thing is, it's understandable why those Fox News viewers would just go back to Fox News after they're no longer being paid to watch CNN. It's something that they know. It's something that they're comfortable with. And this is why there's a big problem with information here in this country, because it's not their fault. And it's no one else's fault for watching CNN or MSNBC or Fox or CBS or ABC. Corporate media and a two-party system did a phenomenal job. And look, I apologize for saying this. They did a phenomenal job in convincing Americans which parties and camps they should be to, why they should be divided, and why they need to listen to them. This has been going on for decades, where a lot of Americans have been trained to listen to this kind of stuff, to follow the systems and rules. And it took a lot of shaking up the neoliberal system and it for to fall apart, because eventually it would fail and fall apart, for people to wake up to the fact that we're being screwed over. Wages haven't increased. People are being evicted from their homes. Small businesses are being shut down. We're number one in having the most incarcerated people in the world. We can't provide UBI or a Federal Jobs Guarantee Act. We can't provide student debt forgiveness or medical debt forgiveness. We don't have affordable education, Medicare for all. We have money for regime change wars. We have money to bail out the banks and corporations, but we can't bail out our citizens. Look, things are bad in this country, and everyone all across this nation is feeling it. And these politicians abandoned us. And what did the corporate media do? They didn't cover the corruption. They didn't cover how these politicians who've been in power for decades have been screwing us over. They've been giving us the neoliberal soup. So it's understandable why those Fox News viewers went back to watching Fox News. It's what they know, and a lot of people have been programmed this way. That's why independent media exists, because let's face it, folks, the two-party system, both Democratic and Republican lawmakers, don't care about you. And you've seen this get told to you by other independent media networks that have been doing phenomenal work. This is a bigger problem. And CNN, just like Fox, is contributing to this disaster. Now, please accept my apologies one last time. You're going to hear Barack Obama speak about integrity in media. Play it.
It hadn't turned them into liberals. It didn't make them want to vote for Joe Biden. They had just had access to a different set of information. And I think we underestimate the degree of pliability in our opinions and our views.
David, is that the proper takeaway here? Is Obama right?
Yeah, I think that gets at a really important kind of finding of our study, which is that, first of all, President Obama is exactly right. That, we're not finding that you take Fox viewers, and all of a sudden overnight they become Biden voters. That wasn't the goal of our study, and we didn't expect to find that, and we didn't. But we do find that, consistent with what I was saying earlier, when folks who previously watched Fox News start watching CNN, they learn all these things they didn't know before about, for example, the fact that the U.S. at the time was not doing as well as many other countries when it came to controlling COVID, things that Fox News didn't really want to say. Fox News was, in fact, telling people that, COVID's not as big of a deal. And I think that the key implication here is that we really shouldn't think about partisan media as just good for one side, though, right? And I think this is what President Obama is getting at, that if you think of Fox News as just kind of putting a thumb on the scale for Republicans, it is that, but it's not only that. And I think it's also actually bad for democracy, because it actually matters a lot if Trump voters during the Trump presidency think that Trump is doing a great job or just kind of a good job. Because if voters don't learn when politicians on their side mess up, then there's no one to hold politicians accountable. So it actually matters a lot to have, during the Trump presidency, Trump voters be able to say to Trump, hey, we like you, but you need to do this better. Or during the Biden presidency, we need Biden voters to say, hey, Biden, we like you overall, but you need to be doing better in this way. And if partisan media doesn't tell its own side when a politician is not kind of performing up to snuff or doesn't talk about their failings, that really breaks down some of the key mechanisms that keep our democracy responsive. Having a side's own voters tell their side, hey, you need to do better in this way. But they can't do that if media don't tell them how the media is.
Let's pause right here. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS is just as guilty of that as Fox News is. How many times, especially during the 2016 general election cycle, and even during the 2020 general election cycle, when we saw CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC say why Biden or Hillary were the better of the candidates, even though they were horribly flawed, they had really bad track records, they'd been on the wrong side of history. But what did the neoliberal media do? Well, they covered it up. They glossed everything up. They made sure everything looked squeaky clean for Hillary and Biden in both those election cycles, in 2016 and in 2020. When have you seen CNN or MSNBC really say, Biden, we like you, but you're doing the wrong thing? You know what we see corporate media do when it comes down to criticizing Biden? He's being pushed to the left by the progressive lawmakers. AOC and Bernie are pushing him to the left. They're pushing him to the left. What progressive policy did Biden ever pass? What, Build Back Better? Build Back Better is there to help out corporations. It was going to help out corporations and private entities when it was at $7 trillion, and it sure as hell was going to help out corporations and private industries when it was at $1.75 trillion, okay? What about all this thing about Medicare for all, or UBI, all those other promises that Biden made during the election? Oh, wait, that never happened. Biden screwed over AOC and Bernie willingly. And AOC and Bernie have been cheerleading for Biden the whole step way. But yet you see on CNN, and we'll be talking about this later on the show, every single media outlet from MSNBC to CNN are saying, oh, he's being pushed to the left by AOC and Bernie. That's why his poll numbers are so low. No, his poll numbers are so low is because the man is inept, senile, and clearly, again, he's trying to run the country as just a more pragmatic, moderate, centrist, polite version of Trump. Nothing fundamentally changed. The kids are still in cages. We've still got regime change wars happening. Corporations are still earning profits. I don't care what anybody says. Their corporations are doing just fine. Biden isn't some socialist communist person that's being lured in and seduced by AOC or Bernie. That's not the case. Anyways, let's just play the rest of the video.
Politicians are falling down on the job.
David and Josh, thank you both for being here. Good talking with you.
Hey, I wonder if Brian Stelter is going to talk about how those college students were calling out CNN for them screwing up all the time. So the thing is, this caught a lot of attention from a lot of other people too. Mediate actually talked about this event that happened as well. I just want to repeat this quote right here in the article, especially when it came down to Joshua speaking to Brian Stelter when he said, to the point right here, when it came down to what Brian was basically saying, or what Brian Stelter was talking to, basically you're proving what we sensed for a while, Stelter told Kalla, which is Fox viewers are in the dark about bad news for the GOP. That's right, Kalla said, concurring Fox and CNN cover different issues, and Fox News predominantly covers issues that make the GOP look good and make Democrats look bad. To the point, it was a type of commentary which could be heard on reliable sources, just about each and every week. But then Kalla went off book. On the flip side, CNN engages in this partisan coverage, filtering as well, the EL researcher said. Kalla cited the network's coverage of, or lack thereof, of the Abraham Peace Accords as a peace agreement between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. Fox News covered this really major accomplishment about 15 times more than CNN did. We saw how much both networks are encouraging in this partisan coverage filtering. It's not about one side. It's about the media at large. So here's the thing. The establishment media has a perspective. They all have their perspectives and points of view. But this is a big problem because so long as they have control and so long as they're dictating, again, policies that will help, or either at stories that will help their side, it's going to cause further divide. And we're seeing this happen, especially on social media, where, again, the algorithms on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube really help out corporate media and the two-party system keep more people entrapped in their respective camps. If we're going to break out of this, we have to break the monopolies that control corporate media, big tech, and we have to break away from the two-party system. The issue at large is the system that's been feeding us misinformation for years is starting to struggle. We cannot let up, and this is why we need independent media. This is why we need to have independent movements, and this is why we need to have individuals not be party affiliated. Because the system we have just doesn't work, and it's keeping people in the dark.